I'm Larry Krueger, and he's Ryan Smith. Welcome to the Tales from the Bay podcast as we look at the San Francisco 49ers in the 2022 NFL season. Well, the 49ers have arrived at the bye week, Rye, and they are 4 wins and 4 losses. It's not been the kind of year that you would have thought it was going to be, because they lost to Denver, lost to Chicago, lost to Atlanta. The only loss on their schedule that I think a lot of people thought would actually be a loss at the beginning of the year was the Kansas City Chiefs. That was a very one-sided game. And then the 49ers have also found a way to sweep the Rams en route to getting 4 wins. So they're 500 at the break, and we'll see where they go. I'm thinking, so they're 8 games into a 17-game schedule. So there's 9 games left, and I'm thinking 6-3. Down the stretch. I thought 11-6 out of the chute. Now I'm thinking more like 10-7 for the 49ers. But overall, I think very interesting first 8 games. And like always in the NFL, it did not go according to plan.
No, I mean, this has just been one of the most wild years since I've been watching football, at least. Luckily for the 49ers, the past couple of years, it's been like, there's always a couple teams that are close to 13 wins, and you kind of got to get out to a hot start, and you got to sprint if you want to win the NFC West and if you want to get a high seed. This year, it's a marathon. The 4-4 puts them in a great spot. I believe if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs at 4-4. So I think it's just about survive and advance, get as healthy as possible, figure out all this cool new stuff they can do with McCaffrey and Debo. And I mean, honestly, Larry, I feel like they're probably going to end up 9-7 just because, let's be real, like they've
10-7 or 9-6 or 10.
I was going to say the 9-8 for me is going to be my guess, just because they screw up. They're going to screw up some game versus some crappy team, or in some easy spot they're going to let down. The thing is I think 9-8 actually wins this division the way things are looking.
Well, let's talk a little bit about last week. 49ers get a nice win over the Rams to sweep the season series. And I think, even though I think most people would start their conversation with Christian McCaffrey, I think we ought to start it with Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo is 21 of 25. He completed 84% of his passes. It's the highest percentage and completion percentage by a 49er quarterback in a regular season game since Steve Young did it in 1997. So 21 of 25, 84% for Garoppolo, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 3 times. But overall, he threw 2 would-be interceptions to Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey dropped them both. You could make an argument that, Christian McCaffrey's fumble could have gone to anybody, but it went to Ray McCloud. The 49ers have struggled this year with turnovers. They've had a couple games where they've been -3 in turnovers. They very easily could have been -3 in this game, but weren't. And probably because they could avoid those turnovers, they wound up leaving SoFi Stadium with a nice little victory. And I think if you're a 49er fan, you got to feel pretty good about where they're sitting at the bye coming out of L.A.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that it's possible for them to go from that blowout versus the Chiefs, which was kind of demoralizing. Like, oof, that's the bet. They just sized themselves up at home versus, the top competition in the league and fell flat on their face. So, I mean, this with no Debo, with no Juice, with no Armstead, with a lot of guys still banged up. And they were able to get it done with their brand new shiny weapon. And Jimmy G plays his best game probably since 2019 at least. Shanahan gets the monkey off his back in terms of the 1-29 when trailing by 3 or more at half. McVay, that is now only the second time where he's lost a game when he was leading at half. The other time was, I believe, the last game of the regular season last year. So just a lot of good vibes heading into this into the bye week.
Well, and Christian McCaffrey was absolutely spectacular. McCaffrey, 18 carries, 94 yards and a touchdown, average over 5 yards a carry. Then he caught 8 balls for 55 yards and a touchdown as a receiver. And he threw one pass, and it was a 34-yard strike on the run to Brandon Ayuk in the end zone for a touchdown. So he scores as a passer, as a runner, as a receiver. It's only happened 3 times in the history of the NFL. Pretty heady stuff, but man, very impressive performance by Christian McCaffrey, who is not just one of the Niners' weapons. He steps right in as their premier weapon.
Yeah, I actually would say he is their best offensive player already. I don't think that's too premature to say. I mean, the guy finished like 6th overall in 2019 when voted on by the players with that when he had a 1,000 season. I mean, look, Debo, Kittle, all these guys are unbelievable. But I kind of made the analogy in our YouTube post game, kind of like the Golden State Warriors when they got Kevin Durant. It's like, Draymond, Clay, these guys are Hall of Famers, but part of it is like they grew up in this system and the system revolving around Steph. Debo Samuel is so unique and so incredible. He might not be the same guy for every team in the league. McCaffrey was the number 8 pick overall.
Right.
One of the best college football players of all time. He's had an immense workload with no quarterback play dating back to even like those, declining Cam years. And he's just been asked to essentially be an offense onto himself, just getting a zillion touches. And I think that's part of what, it causes the injuries and stuff. And now all of a sudden he's like Kevin Durant stepping in here. He's got all this room because of all these other weapons. And he's now this safety blanket on every play, and it's just going to open things up for everybody else because he's freaked the Rams defense out. They did not know what to do with him.
Well, and for his effort, he wins the NFC's Offensive Player of the Week award. I mean, he was fantastic. And then Brandon Ayuk, 6 catches, 81 yards and a touchdown. Ross Dwelly had a 56-yard catch. George Kittle was really strong. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, Fred Warner had a terrible game against Kansas City, but he bounced back in this one. 11 tackles, a sack for Fred. He had a tackle for loss. He had 2 hits on the quarterback. Bosa also had a couple hits on the quarterback and a sack. Ray McLeod made his presence felt on special teams with 2 good returns. And Robbie Gould hit a field goal, and the Niners dominated the second half, winning the second half 21-0. The other interesting news this week in Ninerland was the trade that on trade deadline day that sent Jeff Wilson to the Miami Dolphins for a 2023 5th-round pick. And, it's interesting. I think the 49ers, John Lynch, talked about it later this week about how Jordan Mason has been outstanding on special teams, and they really like what they have in Jordan Mason, the rookie undrafted free agent out of Georgia Tech. And they really believe, they took Ty Davis Price at LSU in the 3rd round, and they're extremely high on Ty Davis Price, and Lynch said as much this week. So to me, my read on the whole Jeff Wilson trade was that you can be frustrated with the trade, but there's only so many positions to go around. And you have Christian McCaffrey, you got Elijah Mitchell coming back from an injury coming out of the bye week. And then you got Jordan Mason, who they like a lot. And you got Ty Davis Price, who they like a lot. And you got a fullback spot for Juice. And you really don't have, and you got Tevin Coleman already on the practice squad. I just think that when you really look closely at that decision, once they traded for McCaffrey, they didn't have to trade Jeff Wilson, but they were going to have some running back go. And if you said to 49er fans, like today, this week, they're questioning, should they have traded Jeff Wilson? Is a 5th-round pick enough? So on and so forth. But really the debate was going to be, which would you rather have? Would you rather get a 5th-round pick in next year's draft for Jeff Wilson, who's a free agent at the end of the year and has fumbled 8 or 9 times in his career? Or do you want to cut Ty Davis Price or cut Jordan Mason? And I think all things being equal, I think I would have preferred this. As much as I respect Jeff Wilson, I think I'd rather trade Jeff Wilson for a 5th-round pick in next year's draft than cut Jordan Mason and get nothing for him and have him walk.
Absolutely. And I Jeff Wilson is a guy who's loved in the locker room, and I think all 49ers fans and media like really respect the way the guy plays. He's just super solid, and he carried the water for him there with Mitchell out, and before they got McCaffrey, he was really the horse. So I like that they're sending him to the Dolphins. They're sending him to a team where he already knows the coach, he knows the scheme. He'll actually provide them kind of a much needed like thumper in the backfield, because they were rolling with Mostert and Gaskin. So I just like the trade, and I like also, there you go. I mean, the McCaffrey trade was it was a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth and 24. Well, now that fifth, now you can kind of say wash, on that fifth. So now it's really just a second, a third, and a fourth. Plus, I mean, they get Mitchell back, and it's just like, how many running backs can you really carry on this roster? So, no, I thought it was a good move. I'm happy for Jeff too.
Yeah, great. They did right by Jeff. As you said, he's very popular in the room, and now he gets to go to.
This is the last year of his contract too. So
yeah, last year of his deal, and he gets to go play in an offense that he knows. And as far as the Ram game, the Niners defensive front in the second half of that game took it over. The Niners pressured Stafford on 42% of his dropbacks in the second half. And, this is a 49er team that's 4-4 at the break, but in an ideal world, they're going to get a number of players back. I mean, they just beat the Rams in LA, and they did it without Juszczyk, without Debo, without Jawan Jennings, no Elijah Mitchell, no Eric Armstead, no Azeez Al-Shaair, no Dre Greenlaw, no Jordan Willis, no Jason Verrett, no Javon Kinlaw. They may get all of those guys back. Now, Elijah Mitchell's expected to return after the bye week. That came out this week. But if you're a 49er fan, you got to feel really good about kind of where the team is in overall, where they're at in the playoff picture, where they're at in as far as their roster. The 49ers now, with the pick they got back from Miami for Jeff Wilson, I was looking at their draft picks for next year's draft, because so many people are of the mindset that, oh my God, they've depleted they mortgaged the future. As of today, they have 2/3, 3/5, a 6th, and 3/7. So they have a lot of picks, and they don't have a lot of needs. So that, to me, is really interesting to see that they made the deal. They added a great player in McCaffrey. They will not pick in the first 2 rounds in April's draft, but after that, they're going to be pretty busy. They're going to be pretty busy. So I think ultimately they did a nice balancing job between, balancing going for it and preserving their assets. And, and they did a really nice job in this last game on the defensive side, despite not having Kinlaw, no Armstead, no Emmanuel Mosley, no Greenlaw, no Azeez. I mean, you're talking about, 5 starters of 11, week 1 starters, and still the Niner defense held the Rams to 0 points and 50 total yards of total offense over the final 35 minutes and 25 seconds of the game. And, one other thing I think that needs to be mentioned here is the top-rated passers in the NFC in order. Geno Smith, number 1. Jalen Hurts, number 2. The only other quarterback in the NFC with a passer rating over 100, Jimmy Garoppolo at 100.7. So that is interesting right there. Jimmy's playing well. The defense is getting healthy. They're winning despite the fact that they weren't healthy on the road against their division rival. Their new acquisition was historically great in only a second game in a 49er uniform. And so the arrow's pointing up on the Niners. You never know. They could wind up losing a whole lot more bodies in this next game or two, and the whole thing could look differently, look much different in 2 weeks. But right now, they look like, a top team in the NFC, not the top team, but a top team, and a team that if they get back, 95% of those players that they're slated to get back, those guys come back at anything close to what they departed as, 49ers are going to have as good a chance of going to the Super Bowl as any team in the NFC. And, anytime you're hitting early November and you're, one of the most talented teams in your conference, you're doing something right.
Absolutely. And as far as Jimmy goes, I mean, he's doing exactly what you hope from Jimmy. I would say it's fair to say that he's maybe lost them one game this year. That Denver game, I would really put a lot of the blame, almost not all of it, but a whole ton of it on Jimmy. Even though the Denver defense turned out to be pretty good, but since then he's been pretty clean. I mean, he's 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think you ask most 49ers fans before the season, you're like, how does that sound? 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for Jimmy. I think everyone would be ecstatic. So he's getting it done. Is it surprisingly? And I know a lot of this is just the yak yards or the run after catch yards, but I think he's 5th in yards per attempt as well. So yeah, I mean the 49ers offense, they're getting going. The defense is starting to look better. It's just poised. It's setting up for just a phenomenal, end of the regular season and playoffs.
I think Jimmy's realizing too, as he matures as a player, that the goal is to make plays clearly, but the primary goal, I mean, you want to make plays, but you really don't want to make negative plays. Avoiding negative plays is as equally as important as it is to make great plays. So, do you want to make great plays? Yeah, but you want to eliminate negative plays. And if you can, if you couldn't make any great plays in the game, if you can just eliminate making the hugely negative play, you can still win. And I think Jimmy is so eager. The one thing with Jimmy that is really clear, and it's admirable and frustrating at the same time, he tries to make every play. Tom Brady will throw it away. Drew Brees will throw it away. Patrick Mahomes will throw it away. Matthew Stafford, at times, even though he's got a lot of picks, he'll occasionally throw it away. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't understand when to throw it away and just go to the next play. And this year, I think we're starting to see some growth in that area. He's minimizing his negative plays. And, would you want to be able to eradicate all your negative plays and have nothing but positive plays? Sure. But if you can eliminate the hugely negative plays, even if you only make a couple of more plays a game, that's going to help you win games, because the NFL is so much about avoiding the big negative, avoiding the turnover, avoiding the nightmare momentum changing negative play. And he's done a better job of that. And that's, I think, has a lot to do with their success thus far. And I think that's something that you're going to see more of, because I think he understands the more time goes on that making a play is important, but not, staying out of the negative play is equally important.
Yeah, and I think that's where McCaffrey comes in. It's like, that touchdown he threw to him when McCaffrey leaked out into the flat and then just broke for the end zone. That it looked very eerily similar to the Chiefs game, where it was like, okay, they're in the red zone, and now Jimmy's kind of holding it. He's tapping his feet. Nobody's open. It's like there's no McCaffrey. He might try and force that in somewhere, get it picked again, or get sacked. Instead, because he has McCaffrey, it's like, I mean, how can you not trust that guy? Now I feel like he's at the point where it's cool because, it's like worst case scenario, you can just dump it to McCaffrey, and that's not even necessarily giving up. If they need 10 yards, like, you still get it to McCaffrey 4 yards down the field. That's, that play's not dead. He could easily make 2 people miss and get a first down. So, and also I am happy. I mean, I like that about Jimmy. Like, I think that it's probably harder to teach a quarterback to have a short-term memory and like keep firing than it is to sort of rein them back. So I do if they can rein Jimmy back from all those kind of mistakes, then that's I think that's
you'd rather rein somebody in than try to make them take chances that they just aren't willing to take. The guy who, I mean, he's not Brett Favre, but the guy I think of when I think of this is I think of Brett Favre in Green Bay, who was kind of a wild gunslinger coming out of Southern Miss, and then early days with the Falcons, and then he goes to Green Bay in a trade, and Holmgren, smoothed out his rough spots, and Holmgren created that structure, and he played within Holmgren's offense, and eventually he got to be just an absolute unstoppable guy because he had that desire, crazy burning desire to make every play, but at the same time he also could exist within structure of that offense, and he just ran it to perfection. So, maybe there's growth with Garoppolo as he gets older, as he piles up more reps, and they got a real shot. If they can get their defense healthy and get, in sync and start to practice with a little bit more urgency, as Garoppolo described going into this Rams game. He said that's the key to when they have turned it around in the past, is that their practices are better. They practice with more focus and more determination and greater urgency. And he said he felt like that urgency was something that he saw at practice going into the Rams game. So if it's something as simple as they refine their urgency, their backs are almost completely against the wall. They're going to need to make not run the table, but come close to it in the second half of the year. And I think they understand that. So it's going to be a very interesting final stretch coming out of the bye week. And it starts with the Chargers a week from Sunday on national television. And it should be an outstanding game. Now, one of the other things that highlighted this week in the NFL was the NFL trade deadline was Tuesday, November 1st. And we saw a ton of trades, the most trades we've seen in the NFL on trade deadline day in 30 years. A lot of impactful trades. And, we could go through them one by one, but I'll just throw it to you. Which trade acquisition? Obviously, McCaffrey is a huge one for the 49ers, and they were involved in two trades, sending Jeff Wilson to Miami for a 5th and trading a 2, a 3, and a 4 in this upcoming year's draft, and a 2024 5th-round pick to Carolina for Christian McCaffrey. So the 49ers were involved in two major trades, and you can kind of make an argument that the Niners may have been one of the big winners because McCaffrey is clearly one of the most dynamic players that switched teams during this trade deadline cycle. But what do you think? What trade outside of the McCaffrey trade stuck out to you?
Well, yeah, again, outside of the McCaffrey, I think the McCaffrey trade is far and away the most impactful, both across the league and for the specific team that got him. I guess I would probably have to say maybe Chubb going to Miami, just because it kind of makes them, if you're going to win in the AFC, having a great offense is fine, but at some point you have to have that one game wrecker on your defense that's going to get after Mahomes or Josh Allen and make them feel uncomfortable. Got to have that one guy. So I think that's impactful for them. Ultimately, I don't know if it makes that much of a difference though. And then I guess I like Roquan Smith to the Ravens. The Ravens needed something to sort of mix it up. I still am high on the Ravens. I still think the Ravens are a team that could stealth, make a run. And, they play such a knuckleball offense that I could see them knocking anybody off in the playoffs. So I like Roquan Smith and what's his face? I know their linebacker, Patrick Queen, hasn't been playing very well. But ultimately, as it was super fun. It felt like the NBA or MLB, all these trades happening. I guess it's a copycat league. The Rams did it. And then I think also the Niners kind of put pressure on the league after they got McCaffrey. I think that the one that didn't happen that would have had the biggest impact today was the story that the Rams, who apparently just have first round picks, like just flowing out of their butt. I don't know how they have them all. But apparently they offered 2 first rounders for Brian Burns. And as a Niners guy, I'm very happy that didn't go down.
Little surprised Carolina didn't take him up on that one. That is interesting. I'll say the two that stood out to me. One, they both involve wide receivers. Calvin Ridley going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ridley suspended for the year because of gambling, but man, he's one of the better young receivers in pro football. And Trevor Lawrence, look what they've done there as far as trying desperately to create some weaponry for Trevor. I mean, they gave Christian Kirk a lot of money to go there. in free agency and kind of blew up the wide receiver market all in one swoop, and then trading for Calvin Ridley. And they sound like the Jaguars are protected, and the Falcons are as well as far as the compensation. If the Jaguars sign Ridley to an extension, the Jaguars will wind up getting a second round draft choice. There's multiple picks going back, but it seems like, it seems equitable for both sides. But I love Calvin Ridley as a player. And yeah, he gambled on the NFL. He broke the rules, and that's bad. But I still think that's a terrific trade.
Blair, before you move off of that one,
yeah.
Do you have an explanation I have not heard like the explanation, like how the hell did he go for only, what was it, a 5th round pick?
Well, it's a 2023 5th round pick and a 2024 conditional pick that could be a 2nd round pick if he signs long term. So if he signs long term, it's a 2nd. If he has a good year, it's a 3rd. If he has a lesser year, it's a 4th. At worst, it's going to be a 4th and a 5th. At best, it's going to be a 2nd and a 5th. To me, either way, it seems like a pretty favorable deal for the Jaguars. And that's Trent Baalke, by the way, who made that trade. So I like that trade quite a bit. And I think that's a trade that's going to help Jacksonville long term, and it may give them the exact weapon that they're looking for Trevor Lawrence, as far as long term. The other one I really liked was quietly the Vikings are having a very nice year. And if you really look at their weapons, you got Kirk Cousins, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Alexander Mattison, who there were a lot of teams that wanted to trade for Madison, the backup running back to Dalvin Cook. Now you add TJ Hawkinson. You all at tight end. Irv Smith has had an injury, so they needed a tight end, and they get Hawkinson from Detroit. They also have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins. Some pretty good players in the secondary. Patrick Peterson. They've got a defense that's good on all 3 levels. I think the Vikings are quietly kind of, they're kind of beneath the radar. But I would say, while everybody's talking about Philly and Dallas and the Niners and, other teams, Tampa or Green Bay, I think people are sleeping on Minnesota. And Minnesota getting TJ Hawkinson gives them just another really dangerous red zone weapon. So I liked what Minnesota did. I thought Minnesota had and then I'll say this, the other one I liked is, maybe I'm too wide receiver centric, but Kadarius Toney is the human joystick, and he's got the stop and start ability that very few receivers have. What he hasn't had, he's had some problems just staying healthy, and it seems like he deals with issues in a structured environment. But I think he needed a little bit more structure than what the Giants were offering. And for him to go to Kansas City, where they have McCole Hardman and Mahomes throwing the rock, and they just got a lot of weapons, obviously Kelsey and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think Kadarius Toney, it could be a very, very dangerous weapon in that Chiefs passing game.
Yeah. If they're kind of like the Warriors, like it's like if a guy goes, or like the Patriots used to be, you get a guy like Toney in there, and if anybody's going to get it out of him, it's going to be the Chiefs. I thought you were going to say Chase Claypool. I think that was a little bit of a head scratcher.
That was a bizarre move because he went for a 2nd round pick. He's not playing well, and he went to a team in the Bears that's not going anywhere.
And that might as well be like a late first, like because of how crappy the Bears are.
The talk is that Chicago jumped in over the Packers. The Packers offered their 2nd round pick, and then the Steelers said, well, wait a second. The Packers' 2nd round pick's going to be middle of the round. And then they got the Bears interested, and they played these 2 rivals off one another. And that's how they won. I think the Steelers are going to wind up, well, you're right, with like the 35th pick in the draft or 40th pick in the draft.
Especially after they just traded to Roquan. It's kind of like, oh, are they blowing it up? I do like just all of the compensation aside. I think that's the right kind of guy for a Justin Fields, or like, he would have been good with Lamar Jackson, just like the big guy with the long wingspan that can just go up and get it. That's the kind of guy that Justin Fields is going to be having to throw to, that like those kind of guys and tight ends. So
And I think also they're seeing some improvement from
Yeah.
Fields, and they don't want to wait until next April to get him a weapon. And if you get Claypool in there now, you get the rest of this year, you get whatever off season. These guys can work out together and start building that chemistry. If you waited, yeah, there's a lot of good free agent wide receivers, but it's like, and there's always a good receivers in the draft, but it's a process. So you want to get guys in their prime, and Claypool's now going to be entering his prime, and he's underachieved in Pittsburgh. Let's be honest. He started really hot, and it hasn't happened for him this year. And, now he gets a change of venue, and we'll see if he can become the number one weapon there at Soldier Field.
Yeah. Still, though, going back to the Ridley thing, like, does that give you the feeling that maybe they already kind of have a deal pre-worked out to extend him? Because I mean, that's the one thing I'd worry about. It's like, I don't know how many guys want to go play in Jacksonville. I mean, maybe I guess Lawrence throws it a little bit more down the field than Mariota does, but maybe they just felt like they had to do this trade in order to get him in there. And I just don't understand how he went for like less than Chase Claypool, even with a little bit less on his contract. Like, he's like, it's still a top 10 guy at the wide receiver position, or 15. It just seemed like,
you're definitely not paying. You're definitely getting a cut rate price on him, partly because maybe there's concerns about his makeup. Right. I mean, Why is he gambling on the NFL? Why is he the only person getting caught? Does he have kind of a as he doesn't go with the flow? I mean, who knows? I mean, we really don't know what the deal is. If you're just saying on talent, though, yeah, I think Calvin Ridley is worth more than Chase Claypool. And I like them both, to be honest. But Ridley, I think, is a top. He's a top 10 NFL young wide receiver, and I would say Claypool's more top 30.
Yeah, and it just makes me feel like, wouldn't you have been better off drafting? I mean, London's played really well, but maybe drafting a different position in the first round and then just holding on and then signing Ridley? Like, I don't know. Well, I mean, Arthur Smith's doing a good job, so but maybe he probably knows something we don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, and maybe they had this on their list to do, is to move Ridley, by the trade deadline and go with a new. I mean, they definitely have Pitts in London, and those are their main weapons going forward. And maybe there's a betrayal there when your players gambled and broke rules like that. Maybe they wanted to make an example of him and get him out of their locker room.
Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, very exciting. How are you feeling about just like them? I mean, I'm kind of bummed out about them being on a bye just because it's been so crazy covering the team. I feel like all of a sudden it's like, we're taking a step back, and it's like, I don't know what to do. Why are we not at camp all day today, or practice all day today?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think, though, the bye comes at the perfect time for the 49ers because, I mean, the Kansas City game was rough and the Ram game was physical, and, you're watching guys fall like flies. And it's just I just personally think that, they were losing one or two guys a week every week. So this at least allows them to catch their breath, kind of take a look at the rest of the season and see if they can, start getting healthier. And, the 49ers have a terrific roster. And if Jimmy can continue to play, not mistake free, because he doesn't play mistake free, but if he can just minimize the crucial errors and get the ball out to his weapons, and the defense can get a little healthier, it probably adds up to a trip to the Super Bowl, to be honest. I mean, now a lot of people love the Eagles, and there's people that love Minnesota and Dallas and, maybe even a couple other teams. But the 49ers are the team that has the experience. The 49ers are the team that's played in the Super Bowl. They're the team that's played in the NFC Championship game. They're the team that every guy on the roster has gone on the road and won playoff games. They're battle tested. Shanahan, Garoppolo, the roster, they're not going to shake in their boots or shake at all if they have to go into Philadelphia. They would take that field in Philadelphia expecting to win. So it doesn't mean they're going to win, but I'm just saying the moment is not going to be too big. And so the 49ers in a lot of ways are sitting in a really, really good position because they have been there before. They've got an enormously talented roster. And now the guys who handle the football for them on the offensive side are all pretty dynamic. You're getting a 4-3 running back who's been rested back. Yuke's having his bust out year. Debo's due for a big second half. McCaffrey looks primed for, great things. Kittle's, we're here in November. He's healthy. They've got a guard tandem of Banks and Burford that, really look good. So we'll see. We'll see what they can what they can do. But I think the 49ers are in the mix for sure. Whether they'll get there or not, time will tell. But they're not going to be intimidated going to Philly if that's the route.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you ask me Bills, if you could take for the Super Bowl, Bills and Eagles or everyone else, I wouldn't even think twice about saying everyone else. I still feel like the Bills, this is a little Colin Cowherdy of me, but I do feel like the Bills have not yet proven that was the first kind of time where they really showed up in the playoffs last year in that crazy 13-second game. But ultimately, they didn't get it done. And I don't know. I still just kind of trust Kansas City a little bit more than them. And the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, fell on his face in the playoffs last year. And I think it actually helps the Niners if the Eagles keep rolling and, maybe only have one loss on the year or 2 losses, because I think that if the Niners play them at their place and, punch them in the mouth early, I don't know how they're going to respond. So, yeah.
It's interesting. Buffalo's got a tremendous roster. Von Miller, is one of the main reasons the Rams went to the Super Bowl last year. Now he's in Buffalo. And so you got Von Miller and Ed Oliver up front. They're not. Tremaine Edmonds is an incredible middle backer with size and speed, and they've got some tough players in the secondary. Nobody's special, but Dane Jackson's tough. Teron Johnson, they've got some nice. Obviously, Tre'Davious White, is a big time player back there. So they've got some good players, and then receiver wise, Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox. Those are good receivers. They just added Nyheim Hines to Devin Singletary. You got James Cook out of the backfield. Pretty decent offensive line. So they're solid. They're solid. Josh Allen playing at a really, really high level. I think Kansas City's a little bit better. I think Kansas City's, it's got a lot of speed. They got a lot of difference makers on defense. They got Mahomes
and experience too. They just have so much experience. And the Bills are quietly one of the more banged up teams. And, if they just keep losing guys in the secondary, and it could, things could change.
Be a factor. That is absolutely going to be a factor. There's just no doubt in my mind. These teams that right now look like world beaters, it could look quite a bit different by the time the playoffs roll around. You're talking about over 2 full months of football ahead, and guys go down every week in the NFL. So, it's the way you play the day you play, as they would say. And so we'll see how healthy these teams are. But right now, as they head into the bye, I would say the 49ers and Eagles and Vikings and Cowboys look like the best teams in the NFC. In the AFC, I would say Kansas City, Buffalo, Kansas City, whatever way you want to group it. And then, it's hard to say, but maybe Miami. The Dolphins look pretty good. There was a week or so there the Patriots look pretty good. Then they kind of regressed. And there's Baltimore with Roquan Smith. They could be in the mix. I think that, that trade definitely improves their run defense. So that's probably it. It's probably Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, maybe Miami in the AFC, and Niners, Minnesota, Dallas, and Philadelphia in the NFC, and we'll see where it all shakes out.
You know what? Here's a question for you. Who do you think? So the Packers, the Rams, and the Bucks all have 3 wins. The Rams have played 1 less game. Who do you, without looking at the schedule, who in your mind is going to turn it around the most? Who's going to end up with the most wins of that group?
Between the Packers, the Rams, and the Bucks, I would say the Bucks.
The Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe in the Packers defense. I've seen it a few times. I'm not impressed. The Rams have a bad offensive line. I think the Rams are not going to make the playoffs. The Rams are too top heavy, real thin. They'll probably have just a regular number of injuries. That should take them out of it. So I'll say the Bucks somehow circle the wagons with Brady and some good athletes on defense. But I don't love any of those teams, to be honest.
But the thing is, it's like neither do I. But it's just one of them is going to turn it around. Like it's just how the NFL works. The Rams.
I mean, if you're looking for off the pace teams, yeah. I would look at Falcons with Mariota playing well. Saints defensively look really, really good. If somehow Jameis got back in there, they could surprise. So those to me are the teams that could surprise. Maybe the Falcons, maybe the Saints. Is there another one? Maybe the Titans. The Titans now, we'll see what Malik Willis does. The Titans are a pretty solid team. We get Titans Chiefs this week on national TV, Sunday Night Football.
The Titans
That's going to be a hell of a game. And we get Ravens Saints on Monday night in the Superdome. And I think that could be a very, very good defensive slugfest.
And then Bucks Rams, like it's like that there is a test. Like it's like which one of you, like who is, I don't have no idea who to pick in that game. Like they're both skidding so hard.
I'd probably go with the Bucks at home. That'd be my guess.
So yeah. I guess this would be another way of asking it. Other than the Eagles, Niners, Falcons, and Cowboys, if I was to give you a free $1,000 and said you have to pick another NFC team to win the Super Bowl,
I'm going Minnesota.
You're going no, not Minnesota included.
So wait, you said Dallas, Philly, Niners, and Minnesota?
Yeah, other than those four.
I guess
I was thinking Packers.
I guess I would say Seahawks. I think the Seahawks have something special going. Geno's playing at a high level. They've got a recipe for how they win. Kenneth Walker's a great young back, and they have two really good rookie tackles, and they got two really good rookie corners. And Boye Mafe, rushing the passer, and Kenneth Walker as a runner. I mean, John Schneider had a terrific draft, and as the season plays out, I think you're starting to see it up close. So, I'd go Seattle. I think Seattle's probably going to get beat along the way, but the way Geno's playing and the positives I've seen from their draft class, I'll take a flyer on them.
Yeah, I mean that Niner game up there is going to be something else because all of a sudden the 12th man. I thought that they'd left with Russell Wilson, but I'm pretty sure they just love this team up there. And how could you not?
And the dynamic going right now with them is they may wind up making the playoffs and getting the first pick in the draft. So, that's really intriguing. And I think they're going to be kind of buoyed by that as the season continues, knowing that they've got Denver's number one pick, and Denver could be, the worst team in football by the end, and they could wind up, legitimately advancing in the NFC playoffs. So, yeah, I think Niner fans were hoping that Seattle would fall into the abyss and never be heard from again, but it's obviously not going to happen.
I couldn't agree more. And as far as this week's games, there's no Niners game, so no real pick for us. I haven't really completely analyzed the slate as far as gambling goes, but do you have any games that pop out there for you that you feel like you have a good feel on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think that the Falcons have been really good at home this year. They're at home against the Chargers. It's Falcons getting 3 at home. I kind of like that. What else stands out?
I hope they lose so they can play a Chargers team coming off a loss. Coming off a win.
Yeah, I definitely like Seattle to beat Arizona in Arizona. It's Arizona favored by 2. That stands out to me. And I like the under in Baltimore Saints. It's Baltimore's a 2.5-point favorite in the Dome. I think that's a low scoring game. I think Saints defense is playing well. Ravens just added Roquan Smith. Both teams will be sky high. I think there'll be some offensive struggles. I like the under 48 in that one.
I think the ones I'm really liking, I like the Commanders at home getting 3.5 to the Vikings. I don't know how this whole Dan Snyder thing affects things, but I don't know. I'm choosing to believe it puts a little pep in their step, and I just love the Heineke experience. So give me the commies in that one. Honestly, sprinkle a little on the money line. I gotta think the Packers are gonna win by more than 3.5 at the Lions. Like, what are they gonna lose 5 games in a row? I feel like they're due to win one by margin. I kind of like the Panthers on the road getting 7 at the Bengals. The Bengals just kind of showed what a big deal it is that they lost Jamar Chase. And actually, PJ Walker looks freaking good, and they should be feeling pretty good about themselves. And then
Panthers have not won on the road though, and I think the Bengals are going to be better at home this week.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not one of my favorites.
Okay. I like the Rams catching 3 at Tampa. And then you know what? I like the Titans plus 12.5. I don't care if Malik Willis is back there passing for 50 yards. Vrabel just always plays those guys tough. So I feel in honor of Vrabel and how tough his team is and how little respect they get at 5-2. I'm going to take the 12.5.
Yeah, that's a tough one too. That's at Arrowhead, and it's a primetime game at Arrowhead.
I know.
And then who knows? It could be cold too. So
Tractor Cedo season.
Yeah, it's tough to say. The NFL is such a crapshoot. I'll tell you the game that I would love to watch is Bills Jets from MetLife. The Jets are catching 12.5. And it's one thing to give points with Buffalo in Buffalo, but the Jets are playing pretty good. The Jets are 5-3. I think the Jets hang around in that game.
Interesting. And then I gotta ask you about college football. We got 2 great games. More than 2, but the 2 that I'm looking at, LSU at home to Alabama. LSU is a little bit of a schizophrenic team, but they've looked really good these past couple of weeks, and that's kind of like a Brian Kelly signature, right? Getting better throughout the season. I don't know, man. They're catching 13.5 points in Louisiana in the Superdome, or not in the Superdome, in
Tiger Stadium.
In Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to take LSU and Brian Kelly's first stab at Nick Saban.
Yeah, that's 13.5, so 2 touchdowns covers. I'd probably would go with that. I kind of like K-State on the money line in Manhattan against Texas.
Oh yeah.
I think Texas is overrated. K-State's been playing well. They got the running back who's super fast. And you've got Adrian Martinez, the Nebraska transfer. He's played well. K-State's 6-2, 4-1 inside the Big 12. Texas is 5-1, 3-2 in the Big 12. But this is in Manhattan, Kansas. I like K-State to win outright there.
Texas has no toughness.
I like Clemson to beat Notre Dame by more than 3.5 at Touchdown Jesus in South Bend. And Clemson's got a perfect record. Everybody says they're not legit. I think that's gonna stick in their craw. This is not a vintage Notre Dame team by any stretch. So I like that. What else?
Then the biggest one of them all, Georgia -8 versus Tennessee.
Yeah, I like Georgia. Between the hedges to beat Tennessee.
Too.
Yeah, Georgia's the best team. They got the veteran quarterback, though they did lose Nolan Smith, I believe, for the year. Their linebacker, he's really good. So that's a loss. But I mean, some of these top teams in the SEC are just, the injuries. They're unaffected by injuries because they're just so deep. Yeah, I like Georgia there. I like Georgia definitely to beat Tennessee. Tennessee, Herndon's good. They got a good offense. But no, the Georgia's defense will outclass them. I definitely like Georgia. I
like Tennessee.
I like, it's funny. The SC Cal game is going to be a fun game to watch. That's going to be 7:30 down at the Coliseum. And I just think that Cal hangs in that game. I would take Cal in the points. It's SC, 21.5 point favorites. But you know what? These schools are, SC is really, really good, but Cal's not intimidated. And, Cal's head coach is a tremendous, Justin Wilcox is a tremendous coach as an underdog, and they just hang. They always keep the game low scoring, and then you're getting 21.5. So I would get down on that before that gets to 20.5. I'll take Cal plus 21.5. That hook may be, may look huge by the end of the day. And then if you're going to play around on some games, I kind of like the teaser with Utah. Utah at home it's a really tough place to play. It looks like a big number. It's 17.5, but if on the 7.5 point teaser, you can get that down to Utah minus 10. And I think Utah minus 10 over Arizona is a lock. So I like Utah. Now, if you could find another team to put with that on the teaser, maybe you tease Georgia, so it's Georgia at home minus 0.5 against Tennessee. And then you pair that with Utah minus 10 at home against Arizona. That might be my 2-teamer right there.
I think my favorite play of the day is I want to take the points with Texas Tech. I think that this is I think TCU's on upset watch this week. I'm going to take the points with Texas Tech, parlay it, not even tease it, parlay the points plus 9.5 with the over. We're going to see shootout. That's going to be a fun one.
The over under 69 in that game.
Give it to me. Feed it to me, baby.
So you like Texas Tech to win the game or just to hang within the points?
I like them just to hang, but I will sprinkle a little on the money line. But plus, they're getting 9.5. I think it's about time for TCU to go down.
Yeah, and of course, that's. I was going to say we're getting close to the Thanksgiving Day games, but not quite yet. But yeah, there's college football. There was Wednesday night college football, Tuesday night college football, Thursday night college football, Friday night, every night except for Monday night. There's been college football.
Yeah, I think there's football every day for
the Maction.
Yeah, Maction, baby.
Yeah, the Maction on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and I think it's time to wrap, but this was a fun one, just kind of looking around the league a little bit, getting our bearings. It's going to be fun to, sort of scout the rest of the league, not just the Niners this week.
Absolutely. Be a fun week to watch the red zone and see see if we can put together back-to-back wins in fantasy.
Absolutely. There you go. And with that, this is the Tales from the Bay podcast. Please make sure to search out. We have our brand new Tales from the Bay RSS feed. It's no longer on Gridiron. You now search Tales from the Bay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave a review, 5 stars, all that good stuff. Subscribe. Check out the Krug Show on YouTube. And yeah, it's an exciting week, a nice bye week for us too. And we're going to be back with a ton of energy getting ready to break down Chargers Niners next week.
Sounds good, man. We'll see you then.